How do you build a high-performing culture? This is Culture Architects. Candid conversations with extraordinary leaders sharing their biggest successes, failures, and lessons learned on their culture journeys. Here's David J. Friedman.
Here at the Culture Architects Show, we're fans of exploring a lot of different ways of looking at culture building and leadership as well. So joining us today is William Vanderbloemen. And William is a pastor, and he's also the author of a book called Be the Unicorn, 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest. He's got over 15 years of ministry experience, which we're going to go into today as a senior pastor, and he's got a solid foundation in professional executive search. He's got his own firm, Vanderbloemen Search Group, and he's an award-winning firm that helps churches and other faith-based organizations with hiring, succession planning, and connecting with the right people. William, we're excited to have you on the podcast with us today, so welcome to Culture Architects.
Thanks, David. It's a real honor to be with you. Appreciate you making time.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's go back. Again, you have a very interesting background being both a pastor and now running a search firm. So tell me about how did you get into being a pastor, and what was the transition from years as a head pastor to then changing careers to a degree? Give me that story.
The how I got being a pastor, I have thousands of friends that would love to know the answer to that. I'm from this little town in Western North Carolina, and grew up kind of a chronic entrepreneur. I was the paper boy that bought out the routes around me and redistributed them and sold them back off. So I had a denser route, just a weird chronic condition. And then in college, I had a really, really good time that I shouldn't have. So the net is, when I graduated high school, I guess we had scarcity of talent, but I won most likely to succeed, right? So then fast forward 10 years to high school reunion, and they did new superlatives, which was kind of a fun idea. First to get married, most kids. I was the unanimous winner for least likely career choice.
Okay, interesting. So entrepreneur to pastor.
They'll let you be a pastor? Man, I got no quality control. So I went through this sort of college journey where you try new things and you party too hard and all that. And that led to kind of an awakening, a self-realization, that faith got important to me. And I thought, well, I had some really great professors at Wake Forest, and I thought, that's pretty cool. I'll do what they're doing. So I went off to Princeton to seminary and, thought I'd be a PhD teaching, and then realized that those people actually like sitting in libraries and reading about what got dug up. That gives them energy. And I'd rather go to the dentist, you know. So what's a sales job with faith? Well, there you go, pastor. So pastor for about 15 years and got a chance to serve some really great congregations. And the last being a fairly large and historic church in Houston, First Presbyterian, wonderful people. Left the ministry as I found myself a single dad with 4 kids, and just decided, okay, I need to go do something different. So I went into the corporate world for a Fortune 200 company in their HR department and oil and gas. And while I was there, the CEO said, we need to do my succession. And I'm on HR, so I was kind of on the team. I was probably more like the third string water boy, but got to see that happen. And they used this thing called a search firm. I'd never heard of such a thing. And at First Presbyterian Houston, which is where Sam Houston went to church. I mean, it's a legit place, right? They took 3 years to find me. Wow. I left. They took 3 years to find the next guy, and I was only there 6 years. And so I'm sitting at my desk in my new job in this oil and gas, and I'm thinking, why in the world the business world gets this done? 90 days, they had their new CEO. And then this fabulous church, they got 6 years where they're looking and 6 years where they have some. I thought, oh my gosh. I went home, told my wife, we'd just gotten married, just blended our families, bought a house we could barely afford. And I said, babe, I think I'm supposed to quit my job and start something new for churches. And Adrian looked at me and said, that's because churches love new ideas, right? Which, no, they don't.
Uh-huh.
Your son, I think, might know the answer to this.
Yes.
No, they don't. So off we went. She should have said, I love you and I love your vision, but go back to work. We got to feed these children. Instead, she said, let's give it a try. And it was the fall of 2008,
Wow.
which I don't know if you remember your economy, but that was not the smartest time to quit your
People
job.
weren't hiring.
No. Yeah. But long story made short. Fast forward 16 years, we've completed 3,000 churches, searches. And what started with a really singular question: how can we help churches find their next pastor quicker and better? Like, that was the origin. Has branched out into so many more things now, because you go work for a church and then all of a sudden the board member's like, well, I'm on the board of a school over here and we really need a headmaster and we're values driven. So can you, another board member, oh, I'm on the board of a nonprofit and helping end homelessness in Dayton, Ohio, or wherever it is. Would you come help us with that? And now, so we have these verticals growing, and now probably our fastest growing sector, we still serve churches, but privately held businesses that have a really clean code, that have culture, that they want things to, their top leaders to fit. Kind of like, the easiest way to say it would be the Chick-fil-A's of the world.
Right.
And that's really cool. So we're that's why I'm so excited about your podcast, because kind of where we started was great, and I'm forever thankful. Where we're sitting right now and headed is much more of that's the search firm that understands our culture, understands our why, and they'll go find people based on that, and they'll bring us a tissue match, not just somebody that's talented. So I want to learn from you. And we're all about,
we had a lot to share. So it's a great transition or connection to this whole culture space. So I know, from your background that you have been a big proponent, and I see it on your website, of your cultural statements, your 9 values that you drive. But you've been a big proponent for, I think, some period of time, that culture is critical and that companies should be intentional in how they drive their culture. So what led you to that realization or recognition? How did you someday decide, you know what, the world needs to be more focused on culture, and people ought to do it purposely?
Well, you can't see it in the screen here, but right behind me is my undergraduate degree, which is not in business. It's not in culture. It's in religion and philosophy. So
mine is in philosophy as well.
Okay. Oh, really? So are you an Aristotle guy or Plato?
More of an Aristotle.
Oh, that's kind of where I am.
Yeah.
It's a little more structured.
Yes.
Anyway, everything I've learned in business, I've had to learn on the fly, or from people that were kind enough to teach me along the way. And as we were building this company out from the ground up, just on a card table, we did no debt, no investors, just move at the speed of cash. We started growing really fast, and we started hiring people. And I was coming out of when I learned leadership, it was the 10-year strategic plan, right? Vision, values, the kind of the standard issue stuff that was going on in the 90s and early 2000s. And I was pretty put off by it. And frankly, I don't know that I have the vision to see 10 years out. So I thought, why don't we focus instead on how we're going to behave with one another while we're here? And we've got a vision. We know what we're trying to do. Why don't we focus on how we're going to treat one another while we're getting that done? Yes. And that led to a long process of discovering what we called our cultural values, which we define as how we're going to treat one another and behave while we're accomplishing our vision, right? I don't know if we just got lucky. I don't know how, but very quickly we started winning a lot of awards. Third best place to work in Houston. Entrepreneur named us top company culture in their nationwide survey. And then it got kind of stupid. We won best office dog. I mean, like, it was kind of and one of my staff members, who's a little younger and wiser than I am, said, we need to write a book on culture. I was like, why? And she said, because sooner or later we're going to quit winning awards. I said, okay. So off we went and started looking at what are the books out there on corporate culture. And there's some really great ones. Work Rules, the Google book. You could name more than I could. The Nordstrom Way. The new gold standard is the Ritz-Carlton story. Mercedes has a book out that's really fabulous. But every one of these books was the story of a company, one. And we said, well, why don't we study a bunch of companies? And I asked my assistant at the time, I handed her the Entrepreneur, here's the top company cultures, and there are 150 of them listed. I said, go see if we can talk to every one of those CEOs. Mm-hmm. And we did. And we just asked them a bunch of questions, see what do all these people have in common that are creating a workplace people want to come to. Mm-hmm. And we really think we uncovered a roadmap for building a company culture. It was really eye-opening. And that's when I started to see we were having fun, we were growing. It's easy to say you're a good culture when you're growing 40% year over year. Sure. But I started to see the value and the glue of culture. I actually saw a lot of mistakes we made building our culture. I would love to go write 2 more chapters to the book we ended up. It's called, by the way, I know we're not talking about it today, but it's called Culture Wins, the roadmap to building an irresistible workplace. And it's just case studies. So it's not my story. It's not us. It's what we learned. And the longer I have studied this, the more I think you are really onto something. Culture builds retention. Retention is declining with every new generation that hits the workforce. And it costs so much money to replace people. I mean, so it's probably bad business, I guess, right? If I fix everybody's culture, they'll never hire me to do a search. But
well, it's interesting because your experience parallels to a great extent my own, William, in that I was a philosophy major, got started in business very early. And for me, when we started building culture in my first company, I thought of it more as standards than anything else. I wasn't really thinking about culture per se. There's a certain way that I wanted us to do things. And I figured, well, I can't assume everybody's just going to magically figure that out or just watch me and pick up my cues. That I got to teach people this is the way we're going to do things in our company. And so I defined a set of behaviors for how we were going to operate. We call them fundamentals. That's our own nomenclature. And I created this set of fundamentals for this is how we're going to operate. And at the time, to me, it was just standards. I wasn't thinking about culture this is back in the 80s, and culture wasn't as hot as it is today.
Wow. Yeah.
And we did all this stuff. And it was only in retrospect that I realized, I guess that's really what culture is about. And listeners to our podcast will know that for me, I'm all about everything we talk about is behaviors, like you're saying. I don't really, to a certain extent, you describe behaviors and you call them your values. I make this, in our work, we make this distinction between what we call values and what we call behaviors. Values to me are typically abstract concepts, ideas, notions, beliefs. Behaviors are actions. So I would call your 9 things behaviors and not values. But whatever you want to call them, those are the way that you want to behave. These are the way that we're going to do things. And if you could articulate those clearly enough, and then you can, I call it institutionalize them, now you really have something going on. So I'm curious. So you've articulated a set of 9, you call them values, I would call them behaviors, for this is the way we do things, in our company. And many of them are very synergistic with some of the fundamentals that I teach in my own company. But I'm curious, okay, you've got them written down. How do you, I'm going to use the word institutionalize them. How do you get them so people are living these and they're a living, breathing part of how you operate? Talk about that.
Well, it's a journey, right? And I'm sorry to reach earlier. I was just reaching around to show you my little block that everybody's got on their desk. It sits, it's right there. And but how do you get?
I've got a mouse pad like that.
Well, I get, if I were smart, we would have shot from the conference room and not my office, because the conference room literally has all 9 of them plastered on the wall, literally. Yeah. So, it's a long journey getting there. But I think what has helped mobilize an idea about behaviors or values, whichever word you want to use, it starts with me. If I am not willing to sort of incarnationally live out these values, then it all goes in the toilet. And you know, I'm coming from a very unique perspective as an entrepreneur who started a business. So like everything that comes out of here, if you start your own thing, you are going to set the culture. I tell new organizations, we don't know what our culture is, but we're fairly, you know, we're 10 years old. Whatever. I said, look at the 5 people who have the longest tenure, study them, and you'll know the culture. Because it's not I don't know that the culture, for my understanding, is an aspirational set of things. It's more this. Here's the question we asked when we started studying what are our values. When we are functioning at our very best, what do we do as a team that's common to us, but uncommon to other teams around us? Like what's distinct? When we're at our best, how are we behaving that's really distinct and unique? And that led to a long, wonderful process of going through success stories and then mining out, almost like a archaeological dig, where you're just brushing a little bit at a time and discovering. And that's what we discovered in studying these 150 companies is it takes a long time to really unearth and memorialize your cultural values, because they can't be what you would like to be. They have to be what you are when you're at your best. Like if I said my cultural value is I mean, let's be ridiculous. Let's say one of our values is that everybody can slam dunk a basketball. Well, that ain't happening, you know. Or even better, there's a company we studied that had the big elevator bank in their lobby, one of the largest companies in the world. They have 4 walls, and they had their 4 cultural values on the 4 walls, and it was like, I'll get it wrong, but integrity, trustworthiness, respect, and I forget the 4th one. And that was the lobby of the Enron building.
Right.
So it's not aspirational. It's what you really are. And the minute that I let up on that and quit embodying those values, it will trickle down. Now, past me, what we've learned is when we're interviewing new people, especially if they haven't grown up under our company from an entry-level position, we better interview through the lens of these 9 values to see if they're there. Because I don't know. You figured this out, I bet. I don't know how to teach culture. I think you either line up with their values or you don't. I really don't know how to force feed someone these values. It's really hard. And maybe you can teach me how to do that. But
yeah, there are ways to do that. So I'm curious. I want to push back on something you said there and just open up a dialogue about that. So you made the comment that this can't be or shouldn't be, in your view, aspirational. It's got to be who we really are. And I have a different point of view about that. I think that what we're trying to build in most cases is the best company we can possibly build. And some of that is not who we are today, but it's who we aspire to be. And our goal is to get there. I mean, if we use a sports analogy, we're trying to win the Super Bowl. Right now, we're not a Super Bowl winning team. And there are things we're going to have to, there are things that we do that will help us get there, that we do right now. And there are other things that we don't frankly do as well as we need to do in order to be a Super Bowl winning team. And we're trying to describe what would that look like. And we're not claiming that we are that today. We're saying this is what it would look like. And these are the things we're going to have to get better at and help and support and coach each other along the way so that we can get to that point. And so I would suggest we might want to think about it being aspirational.
That's why you are smarter than me and been doing this long. But to me, they're just something. Well, for example, one of our values is probably the biggest one on that wall in the conference room is called ridiculous responsiveness.
Yes.
And we have just made it the backbone of what we do to get back to people quickly and with intention.
Yes.
And what we discovered over the years is that's really weird.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Most people wait. Most people, and can I teach someone to become more like that? Yes. Can we reward people for behaving in line with that? You better bet you. Like, you don't get your full bonus if you're not living in the values. It's actually part of an annual review for us. So on the other hand, can I hire someone who really isn't good at getting back to people, really is very methodical, very discerning, slower to act? can I bring someone like that in here and have them be happy at work and tell their friends about it? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably
Yeah.
not. So for me, it's behaviors. I say it when I talk to people. It's like we figured out what kind of crazy we were, because it's a little weird to get back to people really fast.
Yeah.
And now we know what our crazy is, and we don't want to bring somebody in here that we're going to make crazy.
Yeah.
So we want to filter based on, are these people somewhat like our values, and can we all work together to get better at them, right?
Yes.
But can I, super example, we had a young woman who worked here. She was so good. Oh my gosh, she was so good. Then she had twins, and one of them had a health problem. And she just said, I love you guys. I need to take care of my babies. And by the way, there's no way I can get back to you after hours anymore.
Yeah.
My life changed. Mm-hmm. And because the values were so well defined, it was no longer a statement of, well, you've got these kids and you can't do work. And she came to us and said, I can't match the values right now. I might be able to when they're a little older. Maybe this is a long time out, but it's that kind of thing that I don't know. And I probably ought to talk to you for a long time about how to coach that. I can coach it up. It's got to be there a little bit and coach it up to another level, but I can't force fit. I don't know how to yet.
Yeah. Well, so what I would say, and by the way, we have a fundamental that we call be a fanatic about response time. That's our language for it. So it's the same thing. We are crazy about how fast we get back to people. It's just a big priority of mine. So like you. And what I would say, so two comments I would make. One is about to what degree can you teach those things and to what degree you can't. The way that I say it, and I'm curious on your point of view about this as a search person, but I say to people that I can hire somebody who has the general predisposition to be the way we want to be, and I could have those traits flourish in our company in a way that they might not somewhere else. So for example, if we talk about people that really truly get customer service, like in their heart of hearts, they're just love to serve. I can take somebody who's got that in them, and if you put them in my environment, that's going to flourish in a way that it might not somewhere else. In their last company, they might have been like the oddball. And in our company, they're like, yeah, that's how we do things here. But I can't take somebody who's missing the genetic code for service and turn them into a service maniac. So
I think
they have to have the predisposition.
So you're saying things more eloquently than I can, but that's exactly what we're trying to learn how to do here is you've got to have some bias toward these values, or you're really just not going to have a very fun time here.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good fit.
And then we can coach you up, and we have a culture team and a culture calendar and a budget for culture and all those things that are expensive and tedious. Many people think, I think they pay high dividends, but if you don't have those innate things, like I'm gonna get in trouble. Can I share something without? Okay, so nobody, right? So like we're fairly notorious for, if we have somebody come in that wants to work here and they come in for an interview and they fly home, we fly them in and out the same day. Having someone from the office text them at like 10 at night when they land and say, so glad you were here. I missed you. Can we connect sometime? And just see what happens. And if they don't text back right away, no big deal. That's not the end of the world, right? We'll keep moving forward. But it is a little bit of a test to see, even if they write back and say, just landed, I'll get with you tomorrow and we'll figure out a time. If they do that,
they get it.
Well, we say they're crazy like us.
Right.
So I've got to find better ways to do it. That's probably entrapment, right? But
I mean, you're testing for that, and it's funny. I laughed about this. I was having this conversation with somebody last week because we are fanatics about response time, like you. And when I hear the excuses people have, I'll get somebody that says, "Sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. I've been traveling," and I think so. Do they not have internet when you're traveling? There's no cell service anywhere where you've traveled. Like you have a phone.
How was Ecuador?
Yes, exactly. Or Antarctica. Because what does that have to do with not being able to get back to me? It has nothing to do with it. You got a phone. You got to leave somebody a text at midnight and say, hey, got your message, just landed, as you said, or whatever. So the excuses aren't there. But I would say to your question, though, William, about being able to coach and teach these things, my experience, and some of our audience know this if they've been regular listeners of our stuff or know our material, is that you absolutely can and should be teaching these things in a systematic way.
Yes.
And the way that we do that and teach people to do that is we talk about the concept of rituals. Churches are all about rituals. And that when something becomes a ritual, it's just part of the fabric of how we do things around here. And the way we leverage that concept, which you could easily do with your 9 values, is we take one each week and we focus on it. We call it the fundamental of the week. You might call it the value of the week. And we do a series of things throughout that week to focus on that particular fundamental.
Oh, that's good.
As a simple example, and you could easily do this, as a simple example, every meeting that we have in our company this week, the first agenda item of the meeting is the fundamental of the week. And we spend the first 3 to 5 minutes talking about it. So our fundamental this week is called follow up everything. I know if you don't follow up stuff, it doesn't get done. And so we're just rigorous about that. So every meeting, everywhere in our company, virtually or otherwise, the first thing we do this week is we spend a couple of minutes talking about following up everything. Next week, every meeting starts with next week's fundamental and so on. So we do a variety of rituals that give us lots of chances throughout the week to think about and talk about and explore and, in a sense, marinate in this value or this fundamental. And if you do that, it's just what you're doing is you're raising the awareness. You're putting it more in the front of people's minds instead of the back of their minds. And the more they think about it, the more they're living it.
I'm going to steal that from you.
Yeah.
So we do it a little bit differently. And of course, what's the business plan that works? The one everybody agrees to. Yeah. That's all. You can do this 100 different ways as long as the whole team agrees this is how we're going to do it.
Yes. So that brings us to the end of the first part of my interview with William Vanderbloemen, author, pastor, and founder of Vanderbloemen Search Group. In the next part of our conversation, William goes into what he calls the archaeological dig for his company's culture. And we talk about what goes on in his firm during the search for a new leader or executive.
This has been Culture Architects with David J. Friedman. Join us next time for more insights and wisdom from great leaders in all walks of life. To book David for your next event or to learn more about his writing, speaking, or consulting, go to davidjfriedman.com. Culture Architects with David J. Friedman is a production of CultureWise.